Now, reports are emerging of significant losses for the Russian Air Force over the Sea of Azov, which involves two major aircraft the Russians are using to coordinate attacks and coordinate defensive operations against the Ukrainians. The first is an A-50 Shmel, which is an early warning and control aircraft. The other is an IL-22M airborne command post. Now, there's some conflicting claims here of what happened over the Sea of Azov, which is right here. As you can see, it's to the east of Crimea, south of where much of the front line is in this region. Russian sources are saying somewhat confusingly that it might have been a case of friendly fire, being shot down by their own air defenses. Meanwhile, Ukrainian sources are saying both aircraft were hit by Ukraine with their air defense systems. Now, the A-50, which you can see right here, is known as mainstay in NATO terms, and it is vital for Russian air operations. It performs reconnaissance and coordinates defensive operations against enemy attacks. Now, this Soviet-era aircraft is only one of 10 in the Russian fleet that was shot down, and frankly, only 6 to 7 were flying anyways, and the rest were used for parts. Each of these is valued at approximately $330 million. The U.S. actually has 31 of these, its version of the E-3 Sentry AWACS, but those are being phased out for the new E-7 Wedgetail, as you see right here. What hurts Russia even more is losing the highly specialized crew needed to run one of these. All of the technical equipment and such inside of the body of the aircraft needs engineers and technicians to manage, and obviously with the loss of those, it's a significant loss to the Russian military. Now, the Rybar Telegram channel, which is linked to Russia's defense ministry, raised the possibility of the aircraft being hit by Russian air defenses. However, Ukrainian authorities from Ukraine's military intelligence, as well as the deputy head of the Ukrainian Parliamentary Committee, claim that Ukrainian forces were responsible for downing the A-50 and damaging the IL-22M. Now, the A-50 apparently went down in the Azov Sea, while the IL-22M made it back to Russian territory. And you see the damage to the tail of the aircraft right here. Clearly, it was an anti-aircraft missile where it exploded into shrapnel, shredding a portion of this aircraft's tail, but it did make it back. Significant damage that's going to take a long time to repair. Now, the loss of an A-50, if it is confirmed, is seen as a significant operational setback and is quite embarrassing for the Russian Air Force. Now, the A-50 plays a crucial role in Russian air command and surveillance, and given the limited number of these aircraft and their specialized crew, the impact of this loss is magnified. Now, the IL-22 is the one that is being reported as potentially being hit by friendly fire, and as we will look at a map showing radar cross-sections that were taken from the actual event, right before these were shot down, the Kerch Bridge was put under an air raid warning, and the air defenses within Crimea for Russia were activated and placed on high alert. So the Ukrainians released the radar tracking for this event, and I've brought it somewhat forward so you can see the 4 main aircraft. Now, a 5th aircraft appears, but I assume it's just some sort of Russian fighter that has been pushed into the air. Now, the first thing is this aircraft here. This is the IL-76, and we'll just kind of watch it as it moves out of the picture. This IL-76 is just leaving and is part of it's a transport aircraft, not a part of this fight. So get that one out of the way. The next one I want you to focus on is this aircraft right here coming in from the east, moving west. That is the A-50. And you'll see what happens here is it begins to move erratically and then basically has its front end. You watch it just flips back and forth. It's like facing one way, facing the other way, turning, and then disappears essentially right here. This is where this aircraft disappears. And so with that disappearance, that is the A-50 being shot down. Now, immediately before the A-50 disappears, when you back it up, you see this aircraft take off. I'm not sure exactly what this aircraft is. I assume it's some sort of Russian fighter that is up in the air because obviously their command and control aircraft and their AWACS aircraft are under attack. And that's why it's able to move like in kind of this crazy erratic pattern. This might be a Su-30, something like that. I'm not entirely sure what it is. But the next aircraft to focus on is this one right here. This is the IL-22. And as you watch it, it moves in also an erratic pattern and starts to move around and then disappears. Now, it doesn't disappear because it's shot down. It's hit at some point and they drop below radar and disappear en route to Russia, which it returns to Russia safely, but as I showed you, had a lot of damage. This aircraft also, this is that aircraft that was launched, not entirely sure what it was. Like I said, a Su-30 possibly. It drops below radar and returns as well, and that's the end of the battle. That's what it looks like. So A-50 crashes here. IL-22 gets engaged somewhere in the same region. You see it taking evasive maneuvers as it tries to get out, gets hit, drops below radar, ends up flying back into Russian territory. Now, a lot of this incident remains somewhat shrouded in uncertainty. The Kremlin is not commenting officially, and they won't, because this is really embarrassing. It's either one of two really bad situations. Either they shot their own aircraft down, or they shot at their own aircraft and damaged it, or the Ukrainians shot it down. Either way, it's a bad look for the Kremlin. But this is a significant tactical air victory for Ukraine, and it really highlights the fact that the Ukrainians continue to adapt despite the fact that they have the broader challenges of shortage of ammunition. They're with less support coming from international sources such as the U.S. and others. It weighs somewhat on the morale of the troops, but they are still conducting massive attacks that are successful on Russian air assets as well as their naval assets and ground infrastructure as well.